We'll go ahead and call tonight's regular city council meeting to order. And for tonight's invocation, we have Pastor Ken Manning from the Taylorville Christian Church. Pastor.
All right, yes, please. Father God, we're honored to serve you and to serve the people of Taylorville. Ask that you please give wisdom to our leaders in the decisions that they take tonight on behalf of all the people. May these decisions be in the best interest of all, and may they honor you and your Son, Jesus Christ, in whose name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Larry Bud.
Here.
Sean Bertle.
Here.
Ernie Dorchenez.
Here.
Rob Heberling.
Here.
Bruce Jones.
Here.
Ray Coontz.
Here.
Martin Voda.
Here.
Earl Walters.
Here. All 8 aldermen present. Okay, we're going to go ahead and approve the minutes, but Alderman Dorchenez had a comment he wanted to make on one of those. I don't think it requires amending it, but I wanted to give him a chance to make a comment on the Ordinance Committee meeting of July 17, 2018.
Thank you, Your Honor. I attended this meeting, and I have an issue with the minutes on page 2. At the top of the page it says the committee asked that the minutes reflect what the final recommendation for a motion would have been had they been taken at this time. And it reads, the motion recommended the City Council to direct City Attorney Romano to prepare an ordinance to amend the city code to state the property owner is responsible for the expense for the maintenance and repair of the sewer line up to including the main tap. The city will assume 50% of the cost of the repairs at a cost not to exceed $3,500 for a 10-foot depth excavation based on criteria, inspection, and deemed necessary. If a residence requires more than a 10-foot depth excavation, these cases would be handled case by case. And like I said, I attended that meeting. I disagree with these minutes as far as that is concerned. I don't want to debate the issue. I don't want to bring it forth to be debated, but I just want to go on record saying that I do disagree with this part of the minutes.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Jones.
There was a correction to the minutes. I did not get back to the city clerk in time. And this was not a motion, but this was a motion that we were thinking about discussing at that time. So the only thing that I wanted to have in was that the total cost, repairs at 50% of the cost of the repairs at a cost not to exceed $3,500 of the total job in there. That would be my amendment to these minutes, and Madam Clerk just said that she would amend those for me, and I would be able to sign the original minutes after they're amended. But there again, this was just a motion that was never brought forward, just discussed at that time.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we approve the omnibus vote designation.
I would second that motion as soon as you get it.
All right, so we have a motion to utilize the omnibus vote for approval of the minutes of the previous meetings and the public hearing listed on tonight's agenda under the title Omnibus Vote Designation. Alderman Dorchenez, second by Alderman Jones. Discussion or comment? Roll call, please.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Ernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heberling.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Okay, the minutes we'll be approving will be the minutes of the public hearing held July 7th, 2014, minutes of the regular meeting held July 7th, 2014, minutes of the Emergency Services Committee meeting held July 9th, 2014, minutes of the Lake Airport Committee meeting held July 10th, 2014, minutes of the Water Environmental Committee meeting held July 10th, 2014, the amended minutes of the Ordinance Committee meeting held July 17th, 2014, and minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held July 17th, 2014. Entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved, Your Honor.
Alderman Walters, second.
Second.
Alderman Bertle, discussion or comment? Roll call.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherly.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz. Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Okay, next we have a resolution. This is for participation in the State of Illinois Federal Surplus Property Program. Entertain a motion for that resolution.
So moved.
Alderman Bud, second by Alderman Walters. Go ahead with the comment, Alderman Walters.
This is nothing new. The council has participated in this program in the past, and I think it's a good program to be involved with.
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Rob Heatherly.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz. Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Okay, next we have an ordinance annexing certain territory to the city. This being the Hamill property located at 1514 West Vanderveer Street. I'd ask, I guess, Mr. Belgandi, you want to stand up and go ahead and tell us a little bit about the Plan Commission and make your recommendations, and then we can start voting on all this stuff.
We have to annex them first.
So we need to do the ordinance first?
Yeah.
1 minute, Tom. All right. Entertain a motion to approve this ordinance.
I'll make that motion, Your Honor.
Alderman Walters, second by Alderman Bertle. Discussion or comment? Roll call, please.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz. Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherly. And the mayor.
And the mayor votes. Yes.
Mayor votes yes also, so 9-0. Now, Mr. Belgandi.
Fair, Owen, we had a very productive meeting at the firehouse, and as I can tell, we only had one fire. The purpose of our meeting was to recommend for approval the rezoning request of the Hamill Estate to rezone from commercial C1 to residential R1, property located at West Vanderbilt Street. That we did do by unanimous voice vote, recommend to the council to approve that. You want to do one at a time?
Yeah, I think so. All right, I would entertain a motion to accept the Plan Commission's recommendation regarding the rezone.
So moved, Your Honor.
Alderman Walters.
Second.
Second by Alderman Bertle. Discussion or comment? Roll call, please.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherly.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Also, on the agenda was the location map and final plat of the Hamill minor subdivision at that same address in West Vanderveer. We also, by unanimous voice vote, recommend to the city council for approval of the location map and final plat.
Okay. Does somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion, Your Honor, with a comment.
Second.
Alderman Walters, second by Alderman Bertle. Go ahead, Alderman Walters.
If it's the proper procedure, I think the variance ought to be added, in other words, a variance for no sidewalks.
Okay. That's correct, right? But we go ahead and throw the,
Do that next.
okay.
Because as far as-
If we're going to accept the subdivision plat, that it will show the variance on there, will it not? If there's going to be a variance, will that be added, or because we're just approving the final plat right now, the way it is right now, so if it doesn't.
You still need a vote to approve the variance. Is that your question?
Okay, well, that's what, but it's going to be separate. You want to do the variance separate. Should it be included in here and we just do it all at once?
Do the variance first, then come back with the final plat that has the variance on it.
Okay, so your recommendation on the variance was?
Okay, on the variance for sidewalk, in reference to the letter from the city engineer, we had a 4-to-1 vote in favor of recommending the variance
Okay.
for no sidewalk.
And that's your recommendation to the city?
That's the recommendation from the.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Alderman Bertle, second by Alderman Walters. Discussion regarding the variance on the sidewalk. Alderman Bud.
For a change, we finally had the city engineer saying to recommend sidewalks. And now it appears that we're saying that we don't want to take his recommendation when we bashed him in the past about sidewalks, not including those. I talked to Mr. Hamill there, I'm not sure that, okay, and after the meeting, I went up to him and told him who I was, and I said, would you be willing to cover the cost to fill the ditch in and put the sidewalks in? And he said he could not speak because there was other family members involved. But we have to start someplace with sidewalks. And the mayor talked to me just briefly that possibly that the city, we could share this cost, and I'm not sure exactly what I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Sure. Well, and talking to the superintendent, we could probably provide the culvert. And it sounds to me, in talking to the Hamels, they can probably do 99% of everything from that point on. And so I guess as a council, we want to say, well, would that be something acceptable? If not, it doesn't make sense for the sidewalk in there just because there's such a drop in that property, right? And so that's why the variance, I think, was discussed and agreed upon. After the fact, we started thinking about it, and you know, it would be nice to have a sidewalk there, but it would require filling in that ditch. So I think we would need to decide, do we want to take advantage of their offer to meet us halfway on this? And
excuse me, Your Honor. I don't realize that there has to be a culvert in that ditch. There is to the property adjacent to it.
Okay.
When we built that subdivision across the street in 92, right after that, about years later, about 98, put that 6-foot culvert all on the opposite side of the street. And that's where all the grates are. Everything else down that road from Houston Street on, there's no full coverage, all culverts all the way down that ditch.
So, I mean,
there's even culvert being put in.
well, I mean, I suppose.
The culvert's put in with the sidewalk, right?
The ditch needs,
the ditch.
yes.
That's what we're saying, that's what we're saying when we say the culvert. The culvert we put down into the base of the ditch and fill over the
How
top
does
of
it
the dirt.
need to be, though?
So the water would flow because of the steep slope and the possibility that the sidewalk would cantilever at some future date without doing extra work with a wall and some reinforcing.
Exactly. What I'm saying is the culvert necessary?
You say, versus just filling it with dirt.
Filling in the ditch with dirt.
Well, the water flows along that's Vandiver Street. The water flows along Vandiver Street from east to west down to about halfway where the property you were talking about. It goes underneath that street and goes out underneath the field and goes out to the sanitary district.
West.
West, yeah, it goes west.
And that's,
Yeah, northwest.
but it is feasible to where there doesn't have to even be a culvert there. I agree.
So it sounds to me like that would be our call. If after looking at it, maybe we could have Joe Green look at it and say, hey, you know, does the city want to absorb the expense of putting in the culvert? If not, you guys would just fill it in? Alderman Hemberling.
What is that expense?
Actually, it was about 8 years ago, I believe, they came in and dug it out for some reason.
See,
I mean, I'm looking for ideas here, guys. Alderman Bertle.
Although I agree with putting sidewalks in wherever we can, this piece of property is kind of unique in the fact that that's a big ditch, and it gets bigger as it heads west. And there's a catch basin down there, kind of across from where the baseball diamonds are. Filling in that ditch with a culvert or not a culvert, I think is a bad idea. And just because we have that in our ordinance saying that we need sidewalks, this particular case, I think, is probably exception to the case. I know we had arguments about the ones out by Walmart, but that was flat ground and the water already had someplace to go. This situation here is kind of unique, I think. I think that the variance should be granted as far as the sidewalk goes.
Alderman Heberly.
can we make this situation similar to what was done out at Walmart and those businesses along 104, that in the future, if the city deems it necessary, that the sidewalk would be put in then at the owner's expense?
If the ditch was full. If there was a culvert or the ditch was full. Because the cost efficiency would be putting up a retaining wall to get the sidewalk up level to where it should be. And right now, we're the adjacent subdivision of Vandiver properties, I can't remember the name.
Arlington.
They're probably 18 inches to 20 inches of drop from that sidewalk to our property. And we're within a foot. So there is a big difference. So there's a ramp or a serious ramp would have to be built to even get to any certain level.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Voda.
One of the questions that we may want to consider also, gentlemen, is if you put the sidewalk in without doing this, filling the ditch in, we may be taking on some liability for the city itself, because that is the city property when the sidewalk goes in. And if we have any issues with somebody stepping off or falling off into the ditch, it is our liability if I breed this properly. That I think if the Hamill family is willing to work with the city to establish the ditch properly, allowing for an ease to put the sidewalks in, I think that's probably the best way to go. At this time, as much as I hate to say it, because you know how I am on variances, this is probably one of the few that has come to the table since I've been on city council that I can say is a justified variance. Costs associated with what they will have to do to maintain, install this sidewalk is astronomical. I wouldn't want to have to bear that cost. I know the city wouldn't have to bear the cost of actually putting in concrete retaining walls. But if we can work with getting the some sort of culvert in there and with catch basins to make sure that that is all resolved properly, and then the Hamill family takes care of these sidewalks from that point on, I think that's a justified way of approaching this. But to say that we're going to require them to put those in with no assistance from the city with a ditch this size, I think that's asking a lot for those individuals.
Mr. Mayor?
Heatherly.
If we grant the variance, those sidewalks will never be put in. Is that correct?
Probably not. Again, there's no sidewalks out there now.
But if we deny the variance, but don't require them to put those sidewalks in at this point until we study a little bit farther, or come up with an easier solution to what sounds like something that's going to be problematic or detrimental to maybe drainage, then I think it would behoove us to not grant the variance, but yet decide sometime in the future what needs to be done if a sidewalk is going to go in there.
How do we get there?
Your Honor, we have a motion and a second on
Yeah.
the floor.
You'll need to, whatever, as I heard what you said, the final plat right now for approval has got the variance on it. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, that's a recommendation
No,
from the
but is
planning.
that drawn on the final plat now?
No.
Oh, it's not on there now?
Mm-mm.
Well, until you decide that, I don't think you can take a vote on the final plat.
Okay, so, right, go ahead, Alderman.
But you have a motion on the floor.
I was like, can we vote on the motion and see how it turns out?
I think procedurally, unless someone
Right.
moves to table it, you got to take a vote on the motion.
One more statement, Your Honor.
Okay.
Is the final plat doesn't indicate sidewalks to start with, so you can't give a variance when something doesn't show that they're on there. Is that correct?
Say that again?
The final plat that I'm looking at here does not show any sidewalks on this drawing.
But your ordinance requires
The
the
ordinance
sidewalks to be
requires.
installed. So if you want to overturn their recommendation, it's going to take a two-thirds vote of you fellows to do that. Otherwise, you table it, come back with, after you study it, and then make up your mind if you're going to allow the variance or you're not going to allow it, and whatever conditions you want to be imposed on it with their assistance in putting in the sidewalks as you direct.
And with
But
the-
right now, I mean, if you do this final plat, approve it now, the ordinance is as is, and they're going to have to put in sidewalks. And that's not what they're wanting to do.
So therefore, that brings us back to the variance, the motion and the second.
You have a motion pending, so vote needs to be taken on that unless someone moves the table.
With that said, Your Honor, I don't believe there's a big hurry to get this completed. Is there, gentlemen, on your behalf? There's some, okay. And just for the Hamills, they had been working on this for a long time. They've dealt with Brent Wendell and Joe Green, going on four months now, or longer. It's been longer than that.
And the sidewalk was never brought up as an ordinance.
This is the first we heard of.
First tonight is what we heard of.
All right, we've got a motion on here.
I got a comment.
Alderman Dorchenez.
Save the best for last. Who would that sidewalk benefit? It would benefit probably only the person that's living in that house, right? I mean, because people aren't going to, there's no sidewalk going to be extended out west on Vandiver Street, so the person living in the house is going to be the one that's going to benefit from the sidewalk. Your father lived there how long? Long time. And he had the wherewithal to put sidewalk in, right? And he didn't put it in. Okay, so my point is that he never had it. He could have had any one of you guys do it, and he didn't do it. So he didn't need the sidewalk. So whoever lives there, I don't think they need it either. So that's my point.
All right, let's take a vote. Roll call, please.
What's
The vote will be on to accept their recommendation for variance on the sidewalk,
meaning?
meaning if they get variance, no sidewalks necessary. Roll call, please.
Martin Voda.
If I vote yes, it says no variance, correct? I mean.
No
it says
sidewalk.
No sidewalk.
Yes
Okay,
means
I'll
no
vote yes.
sidewalks.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
No.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherly.
No.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-2. No sidewalk. Now let's go ahead and now we have the, what are we at? Local, yes. All right, I entertain a motion to accept their recommendation. Alderman Bertle, second by Alderman Walters. Discussion, hearing none, roll call.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherly.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz. Martin Voda.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Thank you, Mr. Belaganti. Okay, next we have an ordinance making appropriations to defray expenditures of the city of Taylorville for the fiscal year commencing May 1st, 2014 and ending April 30th, 15, right?
And that's when we have to wait until July 31st.
Okay, and we're going to hold that until the next meeting.
Mr. Mayor, we accepted all the recommendations of Planning and Zoning Commission. Did we do the ordinance amending the zoning classification and all that?
If it was on the agenda, we did. Didn't we?
I just want to make sure we didn't miss it.
Well, we took care of the ordinance first.
That was the annexation.
All right.
Recommendations, Hamilton.
Is there another one we still
Yeah,
have
we
to
did a
do?
motion on the rezone.
Okay.
Thought we did.
It could,
No,
we approved of their recommendation to approve it.
Okay.
You can include whether or not. you
Okay,
include
so
the
that
ordinance
was
with
also including, okay.
Yes.
Just
Okay.
want to make sure that we've got it covered.
These gentlemen have backed us up there. It was passed.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on, now we have an ordinance authorizing the sale of a 1990 Pierce fire truck. Entertain that motion.
So moved.
Who is Jones?
Vote.
Voda.
Hurt my feelings again.
Second by Alderman Bertle.
Question.
Alderman Heatherly.
Given the condition of engine 4, does that affect the needs for this particular piece of equipment?
Well, my understanding, and they can speak to it if necessary, but they've talked with the buyers, and they've agreed to allow us to hang on to it for a little bit longer to kind of bridge that gap until we know about the other engine with the recently surfaced problems, mechanical problems. So, you know, we can go ahead and make the motion to sell it, and they will kind of bide their time until we feel comfortable letting go of it, I guess.
What kind of a time
Is that
frame?
correct?
What kind of a time frame is that?
Well, I guess that depends on the other votes, right? Yeah, I mean, when we talk about repairing the other one, we'll have to decide whether we want to repair that, and then that will answer that question. You know, on the, first of all, are we going to put out that much money to repair the other one? And if so, then they can get right on it and get it repaired. I mean, what would be your best guess on repair? How quickly could you get it in? And
You should be able to get in this, probably later this week, and I don't know exactly how, probably a good week to get it repaired. So Ramsey's okay with giving us a couple more weeks to have it.
any other questions? Roll call, please.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherly.
No.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Motion passes
The mayor-
7-1.
The mayor votes on this.
Motion passes 8-1. Mayor votes yea. All right, next we have a motion to fill a vacancy in the fire department, which was created by a resignation, and this is being done to meet our SAFER grant obligations. Entertain a motion. Alderman Bertle.
Second.
Second by Alderman Bud. Discussion or comment? Go ahead, Alderman Bertle.
I guess there was some conversation on this earlier today, yesterday, and the day before. SAFER grant originally came through emergency services, and everything thereafter came through there. Probably should have went through personnel at some point and did not. I think after we did the history, and maybe that was done not at the most appropriate time, but after doing the history, we found out it came through emergency services. And I think, if I remember correctly, the SAFER grant passed 8-0. Although we may not like that we're putting on another guy at the fire department, the 8-0 vote for the SAFER grant also includes the regulations and the requirements in order to keep that SAFER grant as far as, personnel, staffing levels, and all the things that go with the SAFER grant. So, I'm not telling anybody how to vote, but if you voted for it originally, this is part of the same process, as far as I'm concerned.
The comments. Alderman Heberly.
Yeah, my issue with this motion is that the entire committee process was just not paid attention to at all. Not only was the emergency services chairman not talked to, but neither was the personnel chairman talked to. We have in the past few months, from several different departments, acted on vacancies within those departments at the council level, and we did that for purposes of timing. But in all of those instances, whether it be superintendents or chiefs, they always showed the courtesy to start that process with the human relations manager and then through the personnel committee. And in this case, none of those things happened. This went directly straight to the mayor, which is your prerogative to put this on the council agenda. But if we don't want to pay attention to the committee process, then perhaps we need to start paying closer attention to it, to make sure that our procedures are followed, to make sure that we do due diligence on this.
Again, in this situation, the chief did come to me and ask, could we put it on the city council agenda? I thought, just based from a conversation, it was a matter of timeliness. I didn't think beyond that, as far as going to the individual committees. As he said, lots of times it's come up through the emergency services. It's frustrating, and I think we get lost sometimes because it's the same personnel of both committees. So you're sitting at the table and you hear it at one, and you can't remember if that was the emergency or the personnel, and I think it's easy to get confused. With that said, especially in this situation, nothing changes as far as output and cost to the city. I mean, I suppose we could argue and say, okay, well, we lost one through attrition, and so it's our intent, we choose not to fill it back. But that was a vacancy that we'd already, at previous meetings, considered and voted on and said, yeah, we're going to do it. So this was just, in my opinion, just putting this man back in this place to meet the requirements of the SAFER grant that we'd all voted on and agreed with. And so, in hindsight, if we have the time, and I think going forward from now on, I'm sure the chief now knows that, we will check with the various committees and even if I have to do research to find out how we did in the past or what the correct method is.
We had the time this time. There's another academy in February, and I would think that these penalties, they would give us at least 6 months to restaff over there before they'd start hitting us with these penalties. We have tried to do things in a timely manner, and I think that in order for our committees to work the way that they should, perhaps we shouldn't be acting in such a timely manner. It really doesn't prove any point other than we can hold things up if we want to. But I just do not like the way this was handled at all.
Any other comments? Alderman Bertle.
Although I agree with filling this vacancy, I think Rob makes a good point on the committee level. I've said this 1,000 times. Everything, whether you agree with it or not, needs to go through a committee at some point, unless it just absolutely can't. And the reason for that, even though I may not agree with it, 5 guys sitting up there may agree with it. So it's not a good practice to limit the conversation because you don't necessarily agree with something.
Sure. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherling.
No.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-1. Next, we have a motion to bid and or advertise for a heavy equipment operator at the water department.
I'd like to make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, give a second.
Second, Your Honor.
Alderman Walters.
Comment.
Go ahead with the comment, Alderman
In this case, the superintendent of that department did go through the human resources manager and start the process. And in this case, it was another one of those timing things. We're going to have a vacancy because of retirement, and instead of waiting on the next committee meeting, I contacted all the committee members just to make sure that there was no objections in bypassing the Personnel Committee. And then after that, I agreed to let it be on the council agenda if the mayor would agree. Thank you.
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Ernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherling.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz. Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters. Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Okay, next we have a motion regarding engine 4 and the motor repairs that are needed. Chief or Andy, you guys want to?
With the recent selling of Engine 2 and anticipation of the tower's going to be here in a couple of weeks, we already talked about how Randy is going to let us allow to have that engine for another couple of weeks as we need to get repairs done. Our engines are going through an extensive NFPA inspection to make sure everything's in working order, so we can hopefully prevent some of this stuff in the future. That being said, Engine 4, we haven't given them a good look. We know it's been smoking a little bit here lately. And it's been determined to their best estimation that we've got, excuse me, some broken piston rings in that motor. It's a 25-year-old truck. We get that. And we really don't have an option because of the needs that we have as a department to repair this truck. The estimate is $7,742.20. Obviously, we didn't budget for this, but there is money in our maintenance item for this. We need this truck because of just the way our calls happen. As an example, yesterday, we had all of our engines out at one particular time. We had a motor vehicle crash with extrication, 2 engines, our ambulance, and a chief's car was out there. And then a short time later, we had another motor vehicle crash that one of our superintendents was familiar with. And we had our 3rd rescue pumper out there. So if we're down 1 engine, and the platform will kind of take the place of an engine if we get in that situation. But we need to have those, that 3 engines. As part of this NFPA review, one of our other engines has been determined has got a broken strap on the fuel, hold to the fuel tank on. So we've got a temporary fix on it for now, but it's going to have to go away probably 4 days to get fixed. So that's one of the other reasons why we want to keep Engine 2 for a little bit longer. We would like to get Engine 4 repaired first, so that way we can, have it in service. And like I said, we really don't want to spend this amount of money on the truck, but we really don't have any option. Our options are if we don't do anything with it, we can't really sell the truck and there's no value there. Even though we're going to want to put $7,700 into this truck, we can still get $12,000 or $13,000 for it in a year when the district is ready to buy another engine for us. So, it's kind of a bad spot for us, but we don't really have any other option, but we really need to have those units there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Alderman Koontz.
I spoke with both chiefs this week about the issue, and although I don't like the situation, I have to fully agree. It's just one of those situations that aren't good, but I feel that we have to do it. Thank you.
Alderman Heberly.
Just 2 questions. The value of it, if it's running?
Is roughly the same. It's almost a mirror of what Engine 2 is. The only difference is a little bit different tank size. So the value is going to be really close to this.
And this expense would come out of your 14-15 budget?
Right. Our maintenance budget for this year.
Thank you.
Alderman Walters.
Your Honor, my father was in the automotive business, repair business for a number of years. I'm hoping that we can just put what he used to call a sleeve in that one cylinder and repair that. But the problem that you have, gentlemen, if you continue to run this vehicle, that piston, rod, and everything else could come out the side of that engine, and you're talking a lot more than $7,000. So we're backed into a corner. So we need now, and once let's put it this way, that's the estimate. Once they get in that engine, it could be more, but once it's tore down, you can't leave it like it is. So we're committed. So I don't have a problem doing this for hopefully the $400.
Anybody else?
If I might,
Alderman Heberlin.
do we need a not to exceed, other than just 7742 in case something incidental comes up
Yeah.
to where they don't have to come back and ask for another
Do you,
$100?
do you feel comfortable with that number, or do you want, not to exceed?
Approximation there, that's yes, I think the mechanic that we're looking at has a lower labor rate than others. We're trying to do everything we can, obviously, sit as we always do. And, it's the best estimate.
Well, I mean, so what would be comfortable, not to exceed 8,200?
85?
8,500?
Yeah, whatever you guys think.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's one of those things that you really don't know until you get in there. So.
Alderman Koontz.
I'll make the motion as accepted, not to exceed $8,500.
Okay, can I get a second on that? Second by Alderman Bertle. Go ahead with a comment, Alderman Walters.
If you're tying our hands behind the racks, if we get into that engine and you've got something wrong with the crankshaft and they can't turn it, and they've got to do something with the crankshaft, then you're limiting us to what we would spend on that engine repair. That means they would have to come back and ask for additional dollars, which would delay the repair, which would delay getting the engine back in service. I hesitate to give an open end, but when you get into these engines, you don't know what it's going to take.
But that's the problem, isn't it? That you won't know until you open it up. So, I guess if it exceeded a lot, I guess you just have to come back and ask for more money. It would be the first time that happened. Anyone else? Alderman Jones.
We're going to have a special council meeting on the 31st. We will probably know by then what it's going to take, and if we have to add something to that agenda, we can do that.
Okay. So we've got a motion. Go ahead and have it fixed for an amount not to exceed $8,500. Motion by Alderman Koontz, second by Alderman Bertle. All right. Roll call, please.
Rob Heberlin?
Yes.
Bruce Jones?
Yes.
Ray Coontz? Martin Voda?
Yes.
Earl Walters? Larry Bud?
I'll have to go along with it, I guess, although my feeling tells me it's the wrong move.
Larry Bud?
Yes.
Sean Bertle?
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Brings the city attorney updates.
Gentlemen, if you'll bear with me and give me a few minutes, I've got about 13 or 14 items to report to you on since the last meeting. The first item would be the Ameren easement. If you recall, I've given you a draft of the revisions that I think the city should seriously consider. It was discussed at the ordinance committee level with the representative from Ameren, who, he indicated he or his lawyer would get in contact with my office. That has not happened to date, so I just want to let you know that. That's why nothing's been brought back to you this evening. Secondly, we also discussed at ordinance committee meeting the issues with IEPA, Laker, and CAM. Since that meeting, I have contacted the Assistant Attorney General handling the IEPA on 3 different occasions. She's been in and out of the office. She's not trying to ignore me, but my question posed to her is to try to set up another meeting in which the lawyers can be present so we can hopefully pinpoint what is the actual issues with IEPA and try to get some resolution to that. The attorney for Mr. Metzger, the CAM organization, has been out on vacation since then, so he won't be back until this Thursday, so we can't really move forward. I have sent a memorandum to the mayor and to Alderman Volta concerning where we are with respect to the interest request, and I think that I'll be happy to share that with the rest of you, but I think we're going to postpone that. It would be a recommendation at this time until we know the position of CAM and also the position of IEPA. Because as I remember the ordinance meeting, Mr. Laker was suggesting there was about another 7,500 or 7,900 that he had talked to someone was going to be on the table, but we haven't gotten that in writing either. So this is another effort to try to do that. Moving on to the your ambulance contract through the fire department. If you recall, I've had a conference call with the Charleston city attorney, with the Charleston fire chief, and with the Charleston representative who handles your ambulance bills. There's two issues there that I brought up, and I think they now concede that those are valid issues. One is which is the compliance with the federal law called HIPAA. Our current form, when we ask folks to do an ambulance run and sign off for the city to release their information to the insurance company to get payment, did not include our debt collector, or people that's going to process our debts. So I've talked to the fire chief, and they're in the process of getting me the form. I can change that to correct that very easily. Charleston's happy with that. In other words, we're going to have that release also indicate that the Charleston folks and their debt collector will be allowed to have this information. And so we won't be in violation with HIPAA. The second thing was the Fair Debt Credit Protection Act. We're going to change that contract. It'll come back before you to put the onus on the Charleston Fire Department and their debt collector that they will indeed comply with that. Because if we need to do that, because there's severe civil penalties if we don't make them do that. And under my judgment, and they've now agreed, under the law, they are considered a debt collector for us. So we have to get that done. The fourth item is that tomorrow morning, George Calvert, is he behind me? I can't see. He was going to be here, but he's not. But he and I have spoke. I prepared the affidavit for Mr. Brackett. He's meeting with him tomorrow for the 717 East Vine property to fill in the blanks for the affidavit of heirship of the other 9 siblings and their heirs to see if we can keep this process moving on East Vine. With that, I've had an email from the mayor. Apparently, some of you are asking to find the procedures, and I can put that in a memo form, which I'll do in due course, on what it takes to demolish or to condemn buildings. So you all have a clearer understanding of it. I can sit here tonight and give you the 3 statutes, but I'll put it in written form, give you copies of the statutes so you can study it yourself and you can understand the process and the hoops that we have to go through to do that process. The next item is on Mr. Shahada, Freedom of Information Act request. We put together the response. It went out yesterday, I believe, by the city clerk. The last 7 or 8 responses, yet today we got another one. So we'll be dealing with that one. I've talked to the city clerk, and it's a little easier one, I think. This one is asking for emails from her office to all of you and all other officials. So I think our last response, this last one out today, included all that, so we should be in pretty good shape.
Your Honor, I have a question for the city attorney on that. If you're able to answer.
I need a breath. Go ahead.
I'm looking at the pages that we received.
Oh, let me bring that up. I gave you a copy of the docket entry, and you can check this anytime you want. We have our county belongs to what we call judici, and you can get on your computers and plug in. You just need the case number, no hyphens, and you'll find out what's going on. I had this printed for your benefit because if you'll see, I think on the 2nd or 3rd line down, there's a whole paragraph. Judge Paisley has ruled on our freedom of information, or actually our subpoena production. I think pretty much as I read it, he followed our recommendations, I think, and so ordered. You'll find it interesting that he has recused himself as the judge in this case because of what he puts in his docket entry, numerous ex parte communications from Mr. Shada to himself. So he's out of the case. There's going to be a new judge. So anyway, I gave you that benefit to know that we're okay with that subpoena, I think.
My question has to do with that. I need an explanation.
Sure.
I'm looking at it. It says, based upon repeated and improper ex parte communications received by this court from the defendant in the form of letters received, including the most recent letter received dated 7/7, Judge Paisley recuses himself from this case. What was improper? What's he recusing himself for?
You are not allowed to contact a judge without the other parties knowing about it and doing it in a joint session without their consent. That's called ex parte. Okay. That's a violation of the ethics rules and judicial rules, and it's just not tolerated. I mean, if I'm your attorney, I can't call up Judge Paisley and say, hey, tomorrow we're going to have a hearing. Here's what I'd like you to consider, without letting the other attorney know that we're having this conversation and including that attorney in that conversation. He's taken upon himself, which I think he's done justifiably so and the right way. He's recused himself out of the case. The chief judge will now appoint another judge to do that.
I appreciate that.
Okay? All right. Any other questions on that? Concerning your debt collection agreement that you've approved to go forward with it, I've talked with Rick Bonister. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He and I are meeting Wednesday morning at 8:30, and we talked verbally on the phone about some revisions that we want to be sure that's in compliance with your ordinance, and talked about how to get this set over. So he and I are meeting at 8:30 on Wednesday in my office to discuss those revisions. So hopefully at your next council meeting we'll have it to where we can actually say those revisions are good. Yes, sir.
Is that going to be an electronic transfer or a manual transfer? How long is that going to take?
I think he's going to do that. We talked.
Oh, he is?
I think he's just going to go to the circuit clerk's office himself, and they have it all computerized. and then pull those out. And then those that have, we're talking about the pre-2012 ones, those that may have current payment orders, we'll pull those back. And if there's some that are old and are not paying on time, then we talked about what the judge is going to require us to do is to vacate some of those payment orders for him to facilitate his collection. Our ordinance violations are different than the county. The county is criminal. We're considered quasi-civil criminal. Different rules apply. So we're trying to put those ducks in order to make it a smooth transition for him to take over.
I was just concerned about paying somebody to transfer all these over, but it sounds like that's going to be.
I think I've given you a couple of printouts in the past, in the recent past, of all those summaries of those cases with numbers and dollar amounts, and that was merely having the clerk print them off for us, so there shouldn't be any charge, I wouldn't think.
Good. Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to talk with you, I got a request from the mayor. I'm going to be fast. With the sewer tap issue, and I have looked at it, and I'm just going to, in a summary fashion, I know some of you are saying, does the property owner have to repair the tap up to the tap or up to and including the tap? If you'll look at your ordinances, and I have, and I can give you the sections, it can be construed either way, folks. The way your application talks in terms of that one pays is that the application is, I'm going to be responsible for the building sewer. You look at definition of building sewer in your code, it does not include the tap. Then you go and you look the other part of it with the one sentence in question. It says it shall repair up to the tap, yet the very next section of your ordinance says, well, we notify the property owners, they got 30 days to make any necessary repairs. So it's kind of a confusing nature. Yes, the legislative intent would be, you've got a section in the early part of your code says, try to follow the council's intent best you can when you interpret these codes. That conforms with statutory interpretation under case law. So rather than me writing you a memo that would pass muster of the Supreme Court, I'm suggesting that it goes to the ordinance committee. You folks decide which way you want to do it, whether you want to do it up to and including or do it up to. The mayor has provided a very thorough memorandum that came from the city of Urbana, that they actually looked at this at great length as I read it, did a survey, and there's all kinds of options what cities are doing across the central Illinois. Some are reimbursing, some 100%, some up to 75%, some 50%, some not at all. I think that's a business question for you guys going forward, how you want to do it, and it's a lot simpler than me trying to convince you or one of you or all of you which way it should be interpreted. Just decide for the way you want it, and I can fix it, and we can go on down the road. That's my suggestion. So I think it goes to the ordinance committee, which I think you've already talked about it, because that's a motion you were thinking about, but you didn't pass at a committee. So
Exactly, because we were waiting for your expert legal opinion. Thank you very much.
I mean, I've got the sections here, and I can pass them out, but don't pay me to write it up. Just do your business and make a decision, and I'll fix it.
All right.
The new ordinance forms that we put in use, they are in use. We still got a couple of them we cleaned up today, but I talked to the police department, and they're going full steam with the new forms, so we should see a little ease of time and expense in that process. George Calvert has asked me to suggest it goes to the ordinance committee. I agree. You have on the books a building permit procedure that if you get a building permit, you pay the fee, you got 12 months to finish the project. If you don't finish the project in 12 months, you can come back and get a 6-month extension of the building permit if you pay the fee again, and if all the exterior of the property has been completed. And George has got one now. He says this is probably he only gets one every several years. It needs to be revised. What George wants it to be revised in the issue of if give them another 6 months if they pay the additional fee, but don't make them do the exterior as a condition to getting that, because then you're going to be stuck with a piece of property that's not completed. That's his thought. So that needs to go there. Mr. Walters has sent an email to the mayor that I sent a reply back concerning the septic system enforcement for the Davis land development. You haven't seen my response yet because you don't have email. Shame on you, but there is a copy to get picked up. What it essentially is telling you is that your zoning code says that restrictive covenants, if they conflict with your zoning provisions, you ignore the restrictive covenants. You deal with your zoning code. You have in place an ordinance that deals with private septic systems. It provides for applications, installation, for inspections, and for penalties. If you're wanting to impose further inspections on an annual basis and so on and so forth, you may do that, but your ordinance doesn't allow the annual, well, it does allow annual inspections now, but if you want to do those kind of things, it's going to take an ordinance change, and that can go to the ordinance committee to be discussed. Otherwise, that what you see in the deeds in the Davis land development is not going to be enforceable by the city. Who's it going to be enforced by is a good question, because when you approve a subdivision that does not have a subdivision covenants, the covenants that was there on the Davis because of the size of the tracts is one-on-one between the landowner and the grantee. So probably, and I don't know the definite answer to this, but that person who gets that property from Mr. Davis may have to look to Mr. Davis to have it enforced, or he's the one that may enforce it, and whether or not it is binding upon successors remains a decision for a later day.
Well, for clarification purposes, for the city attorney and for my fellow alderman, this was discussed. It is not a subdivision. It's a sale of tracts of land, and there are no covenants at all. It's deed restrictions. So that's what it is. So maybe we've confused you, but it's
No, it's the same. It's the same. Whether it's called a deed restriction or a covenants of restricted covenants. Restricted covenants is something that binds the usage of land.
Right.
And when you put a restriction on a deed, you're doing the same thing. Your question, I thought, was who's going to monitor that deed restriction? Who's going to enforce it?
Right.
Who's going to see if the annual inspections are done?
Exactly.
Not the city, unless it's already covered in your private septic system ordinances, as now exist or as you may hereafter amend. You will not have the authority to enforce those deed restrictions per se, unless it's in your code book.
Well, my thought was that it would go back to the county health inspector, and the county.
I don't know if the county would have jurisdiction because it's in the city. You have jurisdiction now because you've annexed it in. So it's something to look at your ordinance committee and see what you want to do with that. They can fix it, but you can't do it now. All right. The other question you had was streets and closure of streets and left turn lanes to benefit the junior high and the grade school, elementary school out there in the north end of town. My memo back to the mayor was, yes, you can do it. It's your determination as to what you want to do to monitor traffic flow and safety of the students. And that should be taken to the ordinance committee. And I sense there's some urgency timing here because school is getting ready to start. So I'd ask that be put on your committee to take place.
And what heading would you like that under?
That would be, I think he wants to close, well, your superintendent of school, not superintendent, your superintendent of schools has asked that you folks, if I get this right, prevent left-hand turns between Cleveland and Bidwell during times when the school's in session and students are present, and also close the school north of the junior high, that roadway, north of where the circle lane is going to Bidwell during that same time period. You can do it, guys, if you want to.
Okay.
He's got it written in a memo, so you can just copy his memo, what his request,
Could
I
you
think.
could you email that to me?
No, there's no email going to happen with the remote.
I can forward it to you.
Let me briefly discuss, because I think Alderman Bud had a question about what do we do and how do you sell city real estate. You should have in your packet tonight the statutes. Let me just briefly tell you what that does. You got three choices. You can take the property, you pass an ordinance, you can publish it 3 times, you have a public auction. You take the best bid or reject all bids. That's option 1. Option 2, you go out and you get it appraised either by an MAI appraiser or a certified license appraiser. You just simply pass a resolution. You can sell it yourselves, you can sell it through a realtor, or you can have an auction. But the kicker on that option 2 is you have to get at least 80% of the sale price or you can't sell it. Option 3 is that if you go option 1 or 2 and you don't get any bids or you're not able to get a fair bid, and if the county's unemployment rate for 6 months is less than the national rate, you can go back and adopt another ordinance and you can go to those 3 things: sell it yourself, sell it to a realtor, or sell it at an auction, and you're not bound by that 80% rule. Okay, so those are your 3 options in a nutshell. All that gobbledygook I gave you, you can read it, help you sleep tonight, but that's what it says. Let me think, what else I got to talk to you about? On your agenda tonight, I see, and I've already talked to your Superintendent Spiegel, down in your water environmental, you're going to have a motion to direct him to extend a water main outside city limits. You really need to direct me to prepare the necessary documents, because there's a special procedure to extend water mains outside city limits. It takes an ordinance to do that. You have to have a special area that you're going to define, and of course you know you got to have an annexation agreement, public hearing, so forth. I created a memo to Mr. Spiegel about 11 years ago. I found it today, and I'm going to give him a copy of it. I think it still applies. He remembers that, so he's okay with you got it. He found it. Okay. So there's a little bit more involved, so I think we can take care of that when it comes up. You may or may not want to do this, Mr. Jones, and this is the final thing. We had a noise ordinance violation that came up to the police department that I had to not prosecute. Because if you remember years ago, and I think you're aware of this, Mayor, you adopted a noise ordinance. You were chief, I believe, at the time, and we had somebody from IEPA come down here and explain it. You had some kind of a device that you could point it, and so many whatever decibels it would be a violation. You haven't used that. So when someone complains of noise next door, unless you're in a car driving down a road, can hear it 75 feet away, or unless you're on Lake Taylorville property, there is no ordinance that I can prosecute for your next door neighbor playing the music too loud. So if you want to do something, you need to do that by ordinance. I had to dismiss that charge. So I think with that, I'm done. Any questions?
Just one question.
Alderman Jones.
Did you originally write the noise ordinance?
Yes, years ago. But what happened was, what the mayor, who was police chief, what happened, he would get bands were doing it at that time.
Right.
He'd send his men down there, or a police officer, point the gun. Of course, the band stops playing. And then it also is picking up a lot of
Crickets.
and other sounds.
Ancillary
That it was, as a
noises,
practical matter, what EPA told us you could do wasn't practical to enforce. So I think he just did away with it. So, and then you've got something, we put something in place out for bands at night across the lake. If you can hear it after so many hours at night, 11 or 12 at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, I can hear a band across the lake, it's a violation. But if you're next door to my house, then maybe you could do it. I don't like that. That's up to you.
Okay. So we're going to ask for a revision to the
Just
ordinance.
take a look at it, see what you want to do. I know the police had their hands tied. I just had to explain to them, I don't know how I can enforce this the way it's written.
Alderman Dorchenez.
That ordinance that you wrote was because of the gentleman that owned the tavern.
I remember that, yeah.
He lived next door. He sold the tavern. Then he didn't like the noise the tavern was creating.
Right. Even though they put carpet on the walls, if I remember right, it still didn't muffle the sound. But,
All right, anything else? Alderman Koontz.
Just for your information, in case you talk to certain people, you need to pass this along to. Myself and Alderman Bud last few days ago went out and did our check of our ward. We passed the property on Vine Street, got out, looked around it, and found that there was, as you know, the front porch is collapsing.
I saw some
There's
pictures.
indication of people being up in there with fireworks, activity of people being in and around that property. It's a real concern of mine that somebody's really going to get hurt. There's a hanging window in the front, about ready to fall, so I took that down, put it on the ground. There's activity of people playing around up in there. And just in case you talk to whoever you talk to about this, I want to relay that to them.
all right. I'll pass that to Mr. Calvert tomorrow.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on to mayor updates. Illinois Municipal League. If you guys are going to go in this year's conference, you need to let Pam know here, within the next few days, so she can go ahead and get reservations lined up. Also, if you'll read tonight's paper, if you haven't already, the National Transportation Safety Board has finally released their findings relating to the August 11th, 2012 plane crash that happened here in town. They do a good job with their article in the paper, and I would just ask you to read that, to try and understand what's going on. I just glanced over it quickly, and it still doesn't give any real answers. Just a lot of maybes and some health problems the pilot had previous to, which you have no idea whether that had anything to do with it or not. But anyway, it's in there for you to review. At noon today, I attended a presentation regarding the proposed CEO program. CEO in this stands for Creating Entrepreneurial Opportunities, and it's young high school kids. They pick them, and actually they have to come up with a business plan, a business, actually a marketing plan, actually run a business, and it's excellent for them. They've had great success in Effingham with this program. The idea is, you teach these kids how to run a business here, and they'll maybe stay around home as opposed to leaving town. I think they created up to a total of 50 jobs now in the Effingham area through this program. He talked today about some of the kids. I think 25 in the one class. He asked them ahead of time, how many of you would be, after you get through college, come back here and possibly live? And it was a low number, like 3. After participating in the program, that number shot up to 21 of them said they'd like to be able to come back and live in the community. So I think it's an excellent program that I hope we can all support. All right, that's all I got, unless anyone else. Alderman Bud.
Alstrom. I talked to Mr. Haiti a week ago tomorrow, or yesterday, last Tuesday I talked to Mr. Haiti, and they have torn the stack down and are making repairs to the this new piece of equipment. They hope to have those repairs done by this Friday and start the equipment back up next Monday. They are going to run the product that was causing the loud noise first to see where they sit. And I intend to be around there when they fire that up to see if the improvements have helped the community out over there. But they have tore the stack down.
Okay. Thank you for that update. Okay, let's move on to committee reports. Discussions and or motions to approve, adopt, and or deny, and or table, and or amend, and or refer to an appropriate committee in whole or in part the matters regarding the following subject matters discussed at the committee level. And we start off with Emergency Services Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Merritt. The first motion we had in that committee meeting, I think will be taken care of on the first page, but in case anybody doesn't know what that truck brought, there's a motion to allow Fire Chief Cruz to proceed with the sale of the 1990 Pierce pumper fire truck to the Ramsey Fire Department of Illinois for $12,500, and to direct the city attorney to prepare that ordinance. We've already approved that tonight. So, right. Second motion was to allow Fire Chief Cruz to purchase 5-inch diameter hose and equipment from the sale of the 1990 Pierce pumper at a cost not to exceed $7,466. The hose has a 10-year warranty. I'd like to make that in form of motion.
Second.
Second by
Bruce Jones.
Alderman Jones. Discussion or comment? Roll call.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherly.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Next motion was to allow Police Chief Herb Street to order 4 2015 Ford Police Interceptor 4-door utilities with all-wheel drive from Bob Ridings of Taylorville at a cost not to exceed $112,380. I'd like to make that in form of motion.
Second by Alderman Walters. Discussion or comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that motion be amended to include the waiver of the bidding process, since it's over 20,000. Take a 2/3 vote of the.
We did bid it.
You did bid it?
Yes.
Okay.
They were the only bid.
All right, you're okay? How about the next motion, too? Do you bid that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they ever bid that. You bid the equipment?
No, for multiple vendors, that's a total of the multiple vendors installed.
So the most one vendor would have to be over 10,000. That you're saying?
20,000.
20,000.
There is no one vendor that I'm aware of over 20,000.
You're okay then. But you just make it, your motion should be not to exceed 20,000 to any one vendor.
Okay.
All right, well, we're skipping them here. Let's go back to the previous one on the 4 squad cars. Roll call, please.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherly.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Next motion was to allow Police Chief Herb Street to purchase equipment for 4 new vehicles at a cost not to exceed $60,000, and I'd like to amend that motion to include no one vendor to exceed $20,000.
Okay. Second by Alderman Bud. Discussion or comment? Roll call.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherly.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Last motion was to order dress, blazers, hats, and badges needed to complete the dress uniforms at a cost not to exceed $4,500. I'd like to make that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Second by Alderman Heberlin. Discussion or comment? Roll call.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherling.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Moving on to Lake Airport Committee.
We had a few motions come out of the Lake and Airport Committee. The first of which was a motion to move forward with the leasing of land for bow hunting only on sites 2 and 7 with the city attorney to incorporate the bullet points discussed and with the minimum bid per site to be determined at a later date. I'd like to make that in the form of a motion and a comment.
Second, Your Honor.
Second by Alderman Walters. Go ahead with the comment, Alderman Voda.
At this time, it looks as though the city attorney will have this ready for review at the next Lake and Airport Committee. Is that correct? And with
When is that?
That will be the second Tuesday next month of
Yep.
August. So
Well-
with that, I just want to make sure that we are going to be able to put on there, put closer to this, get this thing rolling at that meeting, so.
Okay.
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherling.
No.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-1.
The next item, correct me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong, Your Honor, we have got this turned over to the county, is that correct?
Right, right. I did
Okay.
call the IEPA, and they said it doesn't go here.
Okay, so no action taken on that one, is that correct?
Hard to believe, isn't it?
Just pass it along.
Yeah.
It'll come back and haunt us somewhere, I'm sure. So we'll go ahead and go right by that one. The next item was the motion to approve the Lake Campers Cruise to the Lake event on Saturday, August 30th at the Lake Marina. Place that in the form of a motion, Your Honor.
Okay. Second by Alderman Walters. Discussion and comment? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes.
And the final motion was a motion to accept the quote of $15,000, less a trade-in of $2,500 for a Farmall Workhorse 45 tractor. Make that motion with a comment.
You have a second on that?
Second, Your Honor.
Second by Alderman Walters. Go ahead with the comment, Alderman Voda.
Your Honor, I'll be voting against this at this time. I've talked with Superintendent Jackson. This is being used mainly for mowing at the lake. We are continuing to mow at this time with the unit that is having a few problems. With that said, with the season half over, or better than half over, that I feel this probably could wait until the spring and be revisited at that time rather than expend the funds at the time and have the unit sit in the garage for a portion of its.
Okay. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
No.
Rob Heatherling.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
No.
Ray Coontz.
No.
Martin Voda.
No.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, the prior motion on the campers, is that subject to a special event permit?
The special events permit is already taken care of.
Yeah.
We had that taken care of.
They took care of it. They got several events out there similar in nature.
Okay.
Took care of one. All right, so we've got a 4-4, so I guess the mayor will break the tie and say yes. Motion passes 5-4. Moves to Water Environmental Committee.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Romano, you're saying that this first motion should say to direct the city attorney to draft an ordinance?
To prepare the necessary legal documents for, and then the rest of it.
Okay, so make that
Superintendent.
motion.
Okay. You got a second on that?
Second.
Second by Alderman Voda. Discussion or comment? Roll call.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherling.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the low quote of $1,900 from Brockview Well and Pump to perform the annual well maintenance test on 3 of the well locations.
Okay, you have a second on that?
Second.
Alderman Bud. Discussion or comment? Roll call.
Rob Heatherling.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
I'd like to make a motion to direct the city attorney to begin the procedure for annexation of the property at 1409 Sangamon Road.
Second, Your Honor.
Second by Alderman Walters. Discussion or comment?
Questions?
Question first.
Thank you. What ward is this?
Ward 3.
Three? And it's been estimated that maybe the additional cost for road repair improvements with the annexation of this property is about $3,000. So Ward 3 is going to assume those costs whenever they would come to bear.
Okay.
Is that correct?
First time I've heard of it. Annexing that property. Right now, this is what the city maintains. This is where we'll be picking up from one piece.
Are you done, Alderman
I have a
Beverly?
question on the floor.
Okay.
What do they want to annex for? What do they want to annex for? Well, it's, somebody bought the property. It's water annexation agreement. Yes, contiguous
Okay.
in this area.
It looks that way.
We're figuring it out.
I think they're going to
At least that's what the situation is. Okay.
Any response to Mr. Heberlin's question, or a affirmative yes or no?
Well, I didn't know about the road, so we're going to pick up about $3,000 in street repair for this road?
That's the estimate.
Is this a township road right now?
I don't know.
Or is it a city road?
Township or county?
Dick?
Township.
Township?
Would that require jurisdictional transfer from Johnson Township to this?
I'm just asking the question. I don't know.
It doesn't? It just becomes our road?
Property you annex the road.
Okay.
Right.
Only thing you, on a county road, where you have to do jurisdiction.
Alderman Walters?
Spoke with Superintendent Wiseman.
Was that a yes?
I think it's already,
Superintendent Wiseman said that from the old Sangamon plant off the highway there,
are you talking,
all the way to almost the water tower, we already maintain.
Yes.
To the curb.
To the curb.
To the curb. We already maintain all that. So if there was repairs, it would have been coming out of Ward 3 all this time.
But it's the
half a mile
additional
what
that I was
we're
speaking
picking up
of.
half a mile. I drove that.
All right.
My turn, yes?
Any other question? Oh,
Was it
Alderman
my
Voda.
turn now?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
He had to
I did
wait.
drive that, Your Honor. That is if we annex this property, and we had a pretty good discussion at Mr. Dorchenez's meeting about this. Some questions come to the table exactly whether we were going to pick up the road or not and how much we were going to pick up. So I did take a drive out there, and right now from where we're supporting it, going back to Spresser, which is probably roughly less than a quarter of a mile, from there to this property, we pick up another half mile of road. And again, talked with Superintendent Wiseman on this also. I don't know if it's feasible at this time to go ahead and pull in one property and pick up that much more in the way of maintenance on a street. And I think that's one of the reasons we need to discuss this at the committee level. This is one of those that I cannot support at this time due to the fact I don't feel that we're going to be picking up enough in the way of funds to maintain that road. And that's basically, when Mr. Wiseman and I were talking, I'm thinking every couple of years you'd be probably looking at oil and chip. So if anybody wants to see the picture, I'm happy to pass this around.
Okay. Any other questions before we vote? Roll call, please.
Bruce Jones.
I'm going to vote no.
Ray Coontz.
No.
Martin Voda.
No.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
No.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
yes.
Rob Heberlin.
Starting in with a hum.
Mixed bag. I typically go with the alderman from the particular ward, but they're split. No.
All right, so motion fails 5-3. Brings us to Finance Committee.
Okay. Your Honor, motion to reimburse the AMVETS of $599 for the 4th of July parade. That in form of a motion.
Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Alderman Heberlin, discussion or comment?
This is to reimburse them for their cost for the insurance for the parade, and they didn't have much time at the last to be able to come to the city for this, and in order to keep that parade up, we decided to reimburse them to continue that parade.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Ray Coontz.
Yes.
Martin Voda.
Yes.
Earl Walters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heberlin.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Finally, we have a motion to approve and ratify payment of bills in the amount of $1,104,677.63.
Make that in form of a motion with a comment.
Second, Alderman Bertle. Go ahead with the comment, Alderman Bud.
Okay, fuel for all departments, $31,932.60. Electric for all departments, $10,718.67. telephone for all departments, $2,234.80. Workers' comp for September, $26,698. Meyer Austin Remodel, $7,123. And of this, $4,111 is ordinance violation fees. So as you can see, that those violations are expensive. Green and Bradford, $32,535.52. Real estate tax rebate, $1,735.92. U.S. Bank for miscellaneous, $1,065.66. Illinois Department of Revenue for fuel sales tax, $1,725. USA Blue Book for supplies, $1,179.45. Unique temporary help, $2,966.94. O'Reilly and Napa Auto Parts, $1,041.84. Ace Urban Taylorville Feed and Ron's, $1,512.31. IMCO Utility Supply for coupling and supplies, $1,694.40. McCormick's Quarry, $2,339.97. Uniform allowance for police and fire, $1,330.43. Fire Department for Pierce Manufacturing, the aerial platform truck, $899,800. The Street Department, Beelman Logistics for trucking, $3,757.10. Bodine Electric for signal light repairs, $1,017.98. Christian County Highway for culverts and patcher oil, $1,469.76. Lewis Marsh, $3,081.90. Roland Machinery for maintenance and repairs, $3,870.80. Sewer Department, Pena Limestone, $1,290.76. McIntyre and Company for final payment, $12,537.30. Water Department, Altorfer for repair and parts, $1,729.56. Midwest Meter, $10,426.26. Chemicals, $19,523.14. Airport, Ernie Williams for the hangar sills, $2,400. Cemetery for Fresno Brothers for the cannon bases, $1,927.68. And these all total to $1,090,666.30.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the bills? Roll call, please.
Martin Voda.
You betcha, yes.
Earl Wolters.
Yes.
Larry Bud.
Yes.
Sean Bertle.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes.
Rob Heatherly.
Yes.
Bruce Jones.
Yes.
Ray Coontz.
Motion passes 8-0. Okay, per subparagraph G of 5 ILCS 120/2.06, this portion of the City Council meeting is reserved for any person wishing to address the council on any relevant subject matters concerning the city. Would anyone out there like to address the council? Okay, hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn by Alderman Bertle. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just need clarity
Okay.
from earlier.
We all do.
Thank you for that. I have the three parcels that were approved on the final plat.
Right.
The zoning part of it, parcel 1 is the only one that's gonna be zoned R1.
Right.
And the other two parcels will bring back in the commercial one.
Correct.
Is that what, that's the understanding on it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Alderman Koontz.
Quick comment, Your Honor. I spoke with Mr. Halfliger from DNR today concerning the possible mine subsidence in our ward that we've been discussing. Him and his staff told me that they do not feel that it is mine subsidence. I just want to thank the chairman for letting me pursue that, because I just want to make sure we covered all of our bases, but that's their basic recommendation, so just
Okay.
want to let everybody know that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion to adjourn by Alderman Bertle. Got to get a second?
Second.
Alderman Walters, discussion or comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Meeting adjourned.
Aye or
8
bye, Sean?
8:19.
I was gonna second.